They told you empathy is light, that to feel for others is the highest virtue, that the one who listens, absorbs, and understands is the one who saves the world. But they didn't tell you the cost. They didn't tell you that every cry you hear, every shadow you touch, leaves a mark, that the weight doesn't disappear, it settles inside you. And for years, you carry it, smiling, nodding, holding, until something begins to crack. A hairline fracture in the kindness you've worn like armor. Carl Jung warned about this moment. The moment when the empath, after a lifetime of taking in everyone else's darkness, finds their own shadow staring back. And when that day comes, it doesn't look like compassion anymore. It looks like the dam breaking. They see it as a gift. You see it as a burden you can't put down. From the moment you were young, you learn to notice the tremble in a friend's voice, the pause before someone says, "I'm fine." You learn to feel what wasn't yours. You didn't ask for this. You didn't train for it. It was just there, an open channel, picking up every signal, every storm. And so, you became what people needed you to be. The listener, the healer, the one who makes space for everyone else's pain. At first, it feels almost noble. You carry a piece of someone else's suffering, and they walk away lighter. But here's the part no one talks about. When they leave, their pain stays with you. You store it somewhere inside, telling yourself you're strong enough to handle it, one story at a time, one wound at a time. Years pass, and the weight grows. You forget what it's like to walk without it. You don't even notice it anymore, because it's become part of you. Carl Jung had a word for what's growing there: the shadow. The shadow is not just your hidden anger, or fear, or shame. It's everything you refuse to admit exists. And for an empath, it's not only your shadow, it's the shadow of everyone you've ever carried. Imagine it: decades of grief, betrayal, rage, layered inside you like sediment at the bottom of a lake. At first, the water looks calm, peaceful, but the deeper you go, the darker it gets. And that darkness doesn't disappear on its own. This is where the danger begins, because the human mind can only hold so much without release. Jung knew that when the unconscious fills past its limit, it doesn't whisper, it erupts. The empath is no exception. In fact, they're the most vulnerable, because they never learn to set down the weight. They only learn to hide it. And one day, something small, an insult, a betrayal, even a stranger's careless words, strikes the surface, and the shadow stirs. It doesn't happen all at once. The breaking is slow, almost invisible, until it isn't. The empath begins to notice tiny shifts. A heaviness when they wake up, a strange numbness where there used to be warmth. The tears of others don't move them the way they once did, not because they've stopped caring, but because they've run out of space to hold more. For years, they were a mirror, reflecting comfort back to those who came to them. Now, the mirror is cracked, and what looks back isn't always kind. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow. That moment when the pieces you've hidden from yourself step into the light. It's not polite. It's not gentle. The shadow does not ask permission to be seen. It demands it. At first, the empath tries to fight it. They tell themselves, "I just need rest. I just need a break." But rest doesn't dissolve the shadow. It feeds it. Because in stillness, the mind has nowhere to run. The memories surface, the unspoken anger, the resentment of always being the strong one, the listener, the safe place. The truth begins to sting. For years, you were there for everyone, but no one was truly there for you. And that's when the fracture deepens. A sharp awareness slices through the role you've been playing. You start asking questions you never dared to before. Why do I always have to be the one who understands? Why does my pain have to wait until theirs is gone? Why does no one notice that I am drowning too? Jung warned that this is a dangerous stage. Not because it's wrong to feel this way, but because it's the threshold. The empath stands between two worlds, the familiar one, where they keep wearing the mask, and the unknown one, where they drop it completely. And once you cross into that unknown, you cannot go back. This is where the first cracks become visible to others. Friends notice you are quieter. Colleagues sense a distance. Someone jokes that you've changed, but they can't say how. What they don't see is that you are standing at the edge of yourself, staring into a depth you didn't know existed. And somewhere down there, in the darkness, something is waiting. Not to comfort, not to heal, but to be released. At first, the shadow whispers. It's easy to ignore. You hear it late at night, when the house is quiet. A thought you've never allowed yourself to think. What if I stopped caring? The whisper unsettles you. You push it away, but it comes back, louder. What if I stopped saying yes when I mean no? What if I stopped saving people who wouldn't cross the street to save me? Carl Jung warned that the shadow isn't evil in itself. It's everything you've repressed, screaming for recognition. And for the empath, that repression runs deep. Decades of swallowing pain, of biting backwards, of choosing silence over conflict. Every moment you wanted to scream, but smiled instead. Every time you asked to hold one more secret, one more crisis, one more burden. And you did. Now, the shadow wants payment. It wants the years it lost. It wants the voice you gave up. And it will not stop asking until you listen. You notice the change in small ways. You stop answering certain calls. You turn away when someone begins their familiar spiral of complaints. Your patience wears thin, sharper than you've ever known it to be. And then, there's the anger. Not the kind that flares and burns out, but the kind that simmers. The kind that has been collecting interest over a lifetime. This is the part people around you don't understand. They think you're not yourself. But the truth is, you've never been more yourself. For the first time, the mask is slipping. And beneath it is not the endlessly understanding soul they thought you were. It's a human being with limits, with needs, with boundaries you can no longer afford to ignore. The shadow keeps speaking. You've carried them long enough, now carry yourself. And this is where the fear sets in, because you realize the snapping point isn't an explosion. It's a transformation. Once you step through it, the person who emerges will never be the same. And still, the voice grows louder. The shift is subtle at first. You start saying words you never said before, small, sharp truths that slip out before you can stop them. They're not cruel, they're just honest. Too honest for a world that prefers the empath's gentle lies. People react, some pull away, confused. Others push harder, testing you, because they're used to the old version of you, the one who never pushed back. And here's the strange part, you don't chase them anymore. The compulsion to keep everyone comfortable is gone. Carl Jung warned that when you confront the shadow, you awaken parts of yourself you've long abandoned. For the empath, this awakening is not polite. It feels like a rebellion inside your own skin. You begin to remember the times you were used, dismissed, forgotten. You remember the moments you stayed quiet to avoid conflict, and the people who took your silence as permission. This is when you start to see it clearly. 4 years, you've been playing a role in other people's stories, never your own. And when you finally understand this, something clicks. The patience that once defined you is gone, not because you've become cold, but because you've stopped tolerating what harms you. The people around you don't see this as strength. They call it change, as if it's a flaw. But inside, you know the truth. This is not change. This is correction, the balance of decades tipping back into place. Still, the pressure builds. The shadow is restless now, pacing, pushing, demanding that you stop pretending altogether. And the longer you resist, the more volatile it becomes. One day, something happens. It could be small, a broken promise, a careless insult. Or it could be big, the betrayal you never thought possible. Whatever it is, it hits the fault line you've been hiding. And in that moment, you feel it, the fracture becoming a break. No more holding it in. No more swallowing the words. No more being the safe place for people who never made you safe. You know, deep down, the next step cannot be undone. And then it happens. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. There's no alarm, no warning siren. It's a quiet, brutal clarity. A moment when the weight you've carried for decades collapses into itself, and you realize you can no longer carry it. The empath snaps, not in anger, not in revenge, but in truth. The accumulation of every smile forced, every silence endured, every burden accepted without question, suddenly demands release. Everything you were told was noble now feels like a chain. Everything you sacrificed now feels like a lie. Everything you believed about yourself, the patient one, the strong one, the quiet savior, shatters. And in that shatter, a terrifying freedom appears. Carl Jung's warning was never about doom. It was about this exact moment. The half-life of living for others comes to an end. You can no longer be anyone else's mirror. You can no longer be the vessel for what doesn't belong to you. You are forced to look at yourself, raw and unmasked. It is exhilarating. It is horrifying. And here is the cruel paradox. Most people never reach it. Most people live their whole lives numbed, distracted, adjusting to the world, never knowing what it feels like to truly awaken. But the empath, when they finally snap, steps into a world they didn't know existed, a world where boundaries are sacred, where self-respect is a shield, where truth is a weapon and a comfort all at once. And yet, it is only the beginning. Because awakening is not the end of the journey, it is the threshold, the place where the empath realizes the life they have built, the roles they have played, the sacrifices they have made, all of it may crumble under the weight of the self they have ignored. And what emerges from that collapse is unpredictable. Some find liberation, some find chaos, some find a darkness they weren't prepared to face. But one thing is certain, once the empath snaps, there is no turning back. And deep in the shadows of this awakening, something waits. Something Jung warned about but never named. Something that watches the awakened, quietly asking, are you ready to face what comes next? And just when you think the storm has passed, you realize it hasn't. The snap was only the opening. The mirror has shattered, but the pieces are still scattered. And in those fragments, something stirs. It's the part of you that has been buried, ignored, silenced, the part Jung called the shadow. But now it's awake, and it's patient. It doesn't demand. It waits. It tests. It whispers questions that cut deeper than anything you've faced before. Who are you without the roles? Without the masks? Without their expectations? And the frightening truth hits. The world you knew, every person, every rule, every expectation, cannot contain what is coming. You are no longer the safe one. You are no longer the quiet observer. You are something other, something the world has never seen, something you are only beginning to understand. And in that dark, silent space between who you were and who you are about to become, the real test begins, because awakening is only the start, and the shadow is already moving.